Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. And today we are going to be talking about why many policies that are meant to lower migration actually increase it, or at least have a good chance of increasing it. Now, this is based on some work coming out of the MIGNEX Project, which of course I have talked about quite a bit on my channel already. I will make sure to put up the different videos here that I have already done on MIGNEX in the past and make sure to link them in the description below. But what I'm going to talk about today is a piece that was written up by a colleague, Jessica Hagen-Zanker, and it was actually published in The Conversation in April of 2024. I'll make sure to link that also in the description below. Now, okay, why do we see this? Why do we see that many policies that are really meant to lower migration can actually increase it? Well, the first thing is that people migrate for a number of different reasons. I've also talked about that quite a bit on my channel. So if you're interested in why people migrate, you can check out this video here. I'll make sure to also link it in the description below. Now, of course, many people migrate for a lot of different reasons. They migrate for safety, for work, for education, for new experiences or adventure. And, even though policymakers and the media often like to divide migrants up into neat categories, like, for example, refugees or economic migrants, what we really see in reality is that most people move for many different reasons, and perhaps many different reasons all at once. So this makes it, of course, harder for governments to stop it from happening, even though they might want to, because they don't always have a very good idea in the first place as to why migration is happening. And also governments have a really hard time fully understanding how migration and development actually interact and work together, which I've also talked about previously on my channel, and I will also make sure to link those videos in the description below. Something that we very often hear in policy is that to reduce unwanted migration, we need to tackle the so-called root causes of migration to improve people's lives in their countries of origin so that they are less likely to need or want to migrate in the first place. This approach, of course, proposes giving aid money to poor countries to, for example, help with local jobs and improve schools and healthcare. And of course, on one hand, this approach seems to make sense and it feels more humane. But there's, not much consensus in the field on what root causes of migration actually are. And there's actually very little evidence to show that addressing these root causes will do anything in the first place. So in the MIGNEX Project, we looked at 26 local communities across 10 countries in Africa and Asia and the Middle East, using data from more than 13,000 interviews. So when we look at tackling the root causes of migration, what we often see is that people living in poor countries experience many socioeconomic challenges. And these are often disguised as so-called root causes. So the MIGNEX Project has actually defined what root causes are. I also have a video on this channel on what root causes are, so you can check that out here where I go into more explanation. But in general, the MIGNEX Project defines root causes as the widely experienced hardships that are perceived to be persistent and immediately threatening, or both, and to which migration is a possible response. But which ones are the most important drivers for people to take the, big step of leaving home for somewhere new? The problem in migration policy making, which is often relying on guesswork and intuition instead of actually the research that is out there, is often a scattered approach talking about a whole range of possibilities of things that they consider as root causes. An example of this is the European Trust Fund for Africa, which actually funds development projects to promote resilience, economic and equal opportunity, security and development, and to end human rights abuses. this whole program, or this European Trust Fund for Africa, can definitely be seen as a tool to also externalize migration governance. And have a look out also on my channel for the video on the externalization of migration governance, where I explain this in much more detail and give a lot of examples of this around the world. So policymakers assume that addressing all of these issues will reduce people's desire to migrate. But that assumption is often wrong. So through the work in the MIGNEX Project, our researchers found that reducing poverty and increasing education levels might actually increase desires to migrate, because it gives people the means to be able to migrate and broadens their horizons. So for example, having a PhD increases migration aspirations by 22%, compared to people with no formal education. Addressing also other drivers such as scarce livelihoods and a lack of good jobs might actually be more effective, but even so, it can actually take generations before international migration is not desirable, or at least not perceived to be better than staying. So creating jobs actually is also extremely costly. So the World Bank actually estimated that investing the equivalent of 8 million British pounds in Tunisia would create at most 300 jobs in the trade and construction sectors. And that's at a cost of around £24,000 per job. So instead, MIGNEX research found that addressing corruption is key to reducing people's aspirations to migrate. So people living in communities where being asked to pay a bribe for a service is a common practice are 36% more likely to have strong wishes to migrate. So corruption is not only a nuisance, it is generally also a typical symptom of deeper and less obvious societal challenges. So corruption in hospitals or schools and police forces can be signs of low pay, inadequate management, and a lack of accountability in a range of other problematic situations. So for example, in one of the research areas that we worked in MIGNEX in Redif, this is a declining mountain town in Tunisia's desert with high levels of corruption that actually blocks many qualified young people from the most desired jobs and contributes to an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. I also have a video on this specific research area on the channel, so if you're interested in learning more about the specific research area, you can check it out here. Tackling corruption can actually improve the lives and strengthen people's confidence to build their futures locally rather than seeking opportunities elsewhere. Now, of course, none of this evidence makes richer countries' efforts to help poorer countries reduce poverty, create jobs, and expand educational opportunities less necessary. These policies continue to be important, of course, in their own right and can often make a significant difference in improving people's lives and their well-being. But tackling root causes of migration is not easy and is generally not a short-term fix to preventing unwanted migration. So governments who are allocating aid really need to keep this separate from the issue of migration so that this money can be channeled to what it is actually meant for. So addressing economic and humanitarian and political and security issues. Meanwhile, any policy response to manage migration needs to be tailored to the specific local context, to people's concerns and motivations to migrate, and we know that these are different in different contexts. And what we need to remember is that what is most important is that people have the tools to be able to make choices. People need to be able to live a good life where they are. They need to be able to make the choice or have the option to stay, but they also should have the option to go. So what we want to think about when we think about policies and migration is we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to live good lives at home, but we also want to make sure that people have the opportunity to migrate in a well-managed, regular, and dignified way as many of us do around the world. I myself am an American who is currently living and working in the Netherlands, and I was also able to do this and able to have my migration in a very regularized, humane, and orderly way. And we need to make sure that we have more options for these kind of approaches. And one option to that is migration skills partnerships, which I also have a video on this channel. So if you're interested in this more win-win scenario for countries of origin and countries of destination and the migrants themselves, please have a look at that video. Now, if you found this video useful, of course, share it around, give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell if you haven't done so already, so that you make sure that you don't miss any of the videos that we upload on a regular basis on this channel, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.